Life can feel like a maze with no escape, filled with moments of doubt, challenges that seem to lack any explanation, and situations that make us question if there's truly a purpose behind it all. Sometimes we find ourselves in the midst of turmoil, wondering if God truly sees us, if He has a plan for us, or if we are simply facing everything on our own. What if I told you that even in the midst of confusion, when nothing seems to add up, God is still working. He hasn't lost control, He hasn't turned away, and His faithfulness remains strong even when we can't perceive it? Trust God, even when life feels like an unfinished puzzle, because He has the power to piece everything together, to make sense of every difficult moment, and to guide you towards the perfect purpose He designed for you before you began. I want you to do something significant now. In the comments, write this sentence in faith. Lord, I trust in You, even when I don't understand everything. Write it down and let this truth take root in your heart. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. These words carry a profound message that has the power to transform lives. They urge us to release control, to let go of the anxiety of needing to understand everything, and instead, surrender fully to divine wisdom. How many times have we felt as though we carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, believing we must fix every problem, predict every obstacle, and have all the answers? But here we are reminded that we are not alone, that we don't need to rely solely on our limited understanding. There is a greater plan, one that transcends our logic and expectations, and trusting God means surrendering to that plan with absolute faith. When we cling to our own wisdom, we fall into the trap of believing everything depends on us. We analyze, calculate, and doubt, afraid of the unknown. But the reality is that our abilities are finite, our vision is narrow, and our decisions are often shaped by fear and doubt. On the other hand, God sees the bigger picture. He knows every step we've taken and every path that lies ahead. That's why trusting Him is more than just belief, it's a total surrender of our being, a surrender that frees us from the burden of needing to understand everything. Acknowledging God in all our ways is an act of humility and wisdom. It means inviting Him into every decision, every step, every project. It's not just seeking Him in times of crisis or despair, but making Him our constant guide. When we give Him that place in our lives, we experience a peace that surpasses all understanding because we know that no matter how uncertain the future may be, He is in control. He not only guides us, but straightens our paths, correcting our course when we drift off paths that lead us astray, guiding us toward the purpose we were created for. Trusting God with all our heart is a challenge. It requires faith, but it also demands action. It means letting go of anxieties, releasing the need to be in complete control, and allowing His will to unfold in our lives. When we learn to depend on Him, we see doors open in ways we never expected, problems that seemed unsolvable find unexpected solutions, and opportunities arrive at just the right moment. God never leaves us alone, but it's our responsibility to allow Him to work. Sometimes life places us in situations that test our faith, moments when it feels like God is silent, when answers don't come, and problems seem to multiply. It is in those moments when the words from Proverbs make the most sense. Trusting isn't easy when we don't see immediate results, but that's where our true faith is tested, in the waiting, in the uncertainty, where God is working in us, strengthening our patience, teaching us to depend entirely on Him. And when the pieces finally fall into place, we realize His plan was perfect all along. Giving God control of our lives doesn't mean everything will be easy or that we'll never face challenges. It means that regardless of the difficulties, we'll never walk alone. It means that even when we don't understand the why of things, we can trust that a higher purpose lies behind every situation. And when we truly trust, we live with unshakable confidence, knowing that the one who sustains the universe also sustains our lives. Today, the invitation is clear: trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't try to understand everything with your limited mind. Acknowledge Him in every aspect of your life, in your plans, your dreams, your challenges, and you will see how He straightens your paths, how He opens doors you thought were closed, and how He leads you to places you never imagined. God doesn't ask you to have all the answers. He only asks you to trust, to believe that He is in control. And when you do, you'll experience a peace that transcends all understanding. Let yourself be guided. Release the weight. Give it to Him. Today is the day to take that step of faith, to decide to live with the certainty that we are not alone, that God has a purpose for us, and that if we trust Him wholeheartedly, our paths will be made straight. Isaiah 55:8-9 says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." These words confront us with a reality we often overlook. Our understanding is limited, while God's wisdom is infinite. We spend our lives trying to make sense of things, holding tightly to our own plans, believing that we are in complete control. But the truth is, there's a much greater perspective, one that surpasses our human capacity for reason. God sees beyond what we could ever imagine, and His plans for us are filled with a purpose only He can see. We cling to our expectations, our ideas about how things should unfold, wanting immediate answers, quick fixes, and results that align with our logic. Yet God operates in an entirely different way. What seems like a failure to us, He uses as a lesson. What we perceive as an obstacle, He turns into an opportunity to strengthen us. Sometimes we feel frustrated because we don't understand why certain doors close or why life takes unexpected turns. But here God reminds us that His ways are perfect even when we can't see it at the time. The difference between the heavens and the earth is beyond our comprehension, and that's how vast the gap is between our thoughts and God's. We often pray for specific things, thinking we know exactly what we need, but God gives us what's truly best for us, even when we don't see it immediately. He knows the future, He understands every detail of our lives, and He knows what will truly help us fulfill our purpose. Trusting Him isn't just about accepting His will, it's about trusting it completely, even when it costs us, even when things don't seem to add up. Trusting that God's ways are higher requires humility. It means admitting that our ideas, no matter how well-intentioned, aren't always the right ones. Sometimes we want to go in one direction, but God leads us in another, one we don't understand at first, but later realize was the best choice. His paths aren't just higher, they are wiser, more loving, and more purposeful than we could have ever imagined. How many times have we gone through experiences that at the time seemed awful, but later we realized they were essential to bringing us to where we are now? Those tough circumstances, those times of uncertainty, weren't mistakes or coincidences. They were part of a divine plan far greater than our limited human vision. God is never wrong, and when we understand this, we can rest in His sovereignty. Even when we don't understand the process, we can trust the outcome. God invites us to release our worry, to let go of the need to understand everything, and simply walk in faith. We won't always have all the answers, but we can trust that He is working. Every time we face a challenge, every time we feel lost, we must remember that His plan is flawless, His love is endless, and His ways will always lead us to places of blessing. Even if it may not appear so at the moment, when we accept that God's thoughts are higher than our own, we learn to live with peace. We stop resisting what we don't understand and begin to view each experience as part of a greater purpose. We learn to trust that everything has its time and reason. Nothing we face is meaningless. Have you ever wondered why faith holds so much power? What happens when we truly surrender everything into God's hands? Maybe you're going through a challenging period, a phase where it feels like there's no solution. Or perhaps you've already prayed, you've asked, but still you don't see the answer. But what if I told you there's a way to face any situation with assurance? What if the key to transforming your life doesn't rely on what you can do, but on something far greater? Jesus teaches us in Matthew 17:20. I assure you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, "Move," and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Faith has the power to move mountains not because it's a magic trick, but because it connects you directly to the God who controls what seems impossible. Can you imagine what could happen in your life if you believe like that? Today, I want to share something deep and life-changing with you, what truly happens when you place your faith in God, no matter how big or small you feel your faith is right now. Even if it's as tiny as a mustard seed, it holds the power to alter your life in ways you can't yet imagine. I invite you to stay with me until the end of this video, because the transformation you long for could start right here, right now. Let's discover together the incredible power unleashed when you fully trust in God's plan for your life. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video. By doing so, you'll not only be part of this transformation, but you'll also help spread this message to others, touching and blessing lives with God's Word. Let's begin. We live in a world filled with uncertainty, where challenges seem to be part of our everyday existence. At times, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by problems or situations that appear unsolvable. In those moments of distress, many find refuge in something greater than themselves, faith in God. What is faith in God? Faith in God isn't just believing in His existence, it's trusting profoundly in His plan for our lives, even when we don't fully understand Him or see Him clearly. It's that inner conviction that assures us, even in dark times, there is a light to guide us. Having faith doesn't mean we won't face difficulties or that life will always be easy. Rather, it equips us with emotional and spiritual resources to navigate those storms with a peace that transcends our circumstances. It's in the hardest times that faith reveals its true power. Think about those instances when everything seemed lost, but an unseen force urged you to keep going. That force is faith. Many people around the world have shared how their faith in God helped them overcome serious illnesses, financial struggles, family crises, and challenges that once felt insurmountable. Faith not only shifts our perspective on problems, but also empowers us to seek solutions and uncover the purpose behind every trial. Faith in God reminds us that we are never alone. No matter how daunting the challenge, God is always by our side, guiding and sustaining us, even when we don't sense His presence. Trusting Him is liberating. It allows us to release control and rest in the certainty that everything is ultimately in His hands. Faith in God has the power to reshape our lives. It transforms the way we see the world and ourselves. When we believe God has a specific purpose for each of us, our self-worth improves. We stop focusing solely on our weaknesses and begin to recognize our strengths, because we know we are God's creation, and He doesn't make mistakes. This inner change impacts all areas of our lives. We become kinder, more patient, and more understanding. We start forgiving more readily because we realize that we too have been forgiven. Faith enables us to live with gratitude, appreciating both the big and small blessings God provides each day. The well-known saying, "Faith moves mountains," is not merely a metaphor. Faith enables us to achieve things we once thought impossible. When we place our unwavering trust in God, we can face any challenge with courage and optimism. We recognize that while our human strength has limits, God's power is limitless, and faith drives us to act. When we trust in God, we don't passively wait for miracles. We rise and work to fulfill the purposes He has set before us. Faith gives us the courage to take risks, to move forward when others give up, and to believe in our deepest desires. how to cultivate a stronger faith. Faith in God isn't something that just appears overnight. It's like a seed that needs to be nurtured. Praying, reading the scriptures, engaging with faith communities, and reflecting on the blessings of each day are powerful ways to strengthen our trust in God. The power of faith in God is boundless. It sustains us during adversity, transforms us from the inside, and propels us to live a fuller, more meaningful life. Faith is, as Hebrews 11:1 says, the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. This verse is one of the most famous in the Bible, and though brief, its message is profound. It speaks of a trust that goes beyond what our eyes can perceive or our hands can touch. But how can we relate this idea of faith to our daily lives, especially when facing difficult or uncertain situations? When we talk about faith, many people think it's simply believing in something. However, Hebrews 11:1 invites us to view faith as something deeper. It speaks to us of certainty and conviction, two words that ground us in unshakable security, even when we can't see the resolution to our problems. Imagine being in the midst of an emotional or physical storm, such as unemployment, illness, or a family crisis. In those moments, our logic tells us that everything is spiraling out of control, that things won't get better. But faith is that quiet voice inside us that says, trust. Something good is coming, even if you can't see it yet. Faith doesn't ignore problems. It gives us the strength to face them, knowing that God is still working behind the scenes. Learning to have faith in what we cannot see is challenging. It's easy to trust when everything is going well, but what happens when we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel? That's when Hebrews 11:1 truly comes to life. It calls us to believe in what we can't see with our eyes. It's about trusting in God's plan even when we don't fully understand it. Think about those times when everything seemed lost, but eventually things turned out better than expected. That's the kind of faith the verse describes, a trust that remains strong even when everything around us seems uncertain. Hebrews 11:1 also speaks of hope. Faith isn't just about trusting God in the present. It's having a deep conviction that the future will bring good things, perhaps not exactly what we expect, but what we truly need. This faith fills us with peace during uncertain times. Even if the problems remain, we know we are not alone. God has a greater plan, and our trust in that plan brings us a peace the world cannot offer. It gives us hope when the future appears unclear. Living with faith is not easy. It means rising every day and choosing to trust God even when we can't see how He will resolve our issues. But faith is not passive. It urges us to act. For instance, if we're facing financial difficulties, faith motivates us to keep searching for a job, trusting that God will open a door. If we're dealing with illness, faith gives us the strength to persevere. Faith doesn't eliminate our need for action, it directs it. Often we think faith is only necessary during the major events of our lives. But the truth is, faith also shows up in our everyday lives. Every time we trust that God is in control of our small daily concerns, whether it's a family argument, a task at work, or an unattainable dream, we are living out Hebrews 11:1. We don't have to wait for a major crisis to trust God with a small worry. Each time we do, we are strengthening our faith. And as those small victories accumulate, we begin to realize that God was always there, guiding and supporting us, even if we couldn't see it at the time. Hebrews 11:1 reminds us that faith isn't always about what our eyes can perceive. It's about trusting the unseen God's power and love. It's not about understanding everything happening around us, but trusting that God always has a purpose, even in the most challenging situations. The next time you face a challenge or uncertainty in your life, remember this verse. Faith doesn't mean you comprehend everything. It means you trust that God will handle it. That trust, that certainty of what is hoped for and conviction of what is unseen is what sustains us, gives us hope, and allows us to move forward with peace in our hearts. Jesus told us, "For your little faith, because truly I tell you, if you had faith like a mustard seed, you would say to this mountain, 'Come from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." Matthew 17:20. This verse from Matthew 17:20 gives us a powerful and simple image. Faith as small as a mustard seed, yet with the potential to move mountains. It's a metaphor that, although small in size, holds incredible depth and significance. How often do we let ourselves be swayed by what our eyes perceive, by what our logic dictates, and end up trapped in doubt, fear, and uncertainty? But faith invites us to look beyond. It calls us to believe that God is at work, even when everything around us seems to be going in the opposite direction. Every process, every weight, and every challenge is designed to lead us to a better place. We are not here by accident. We are not alone or without direction. God has a perfect plan that is unfolding, even when we cannot see it clearly. Sometimes we believe that our past defines us, that our mistakes have steered us away from God's purpose, but He tells us that His plans are for our well-being, not for disaster. No matter how many times we have failed, He still has a future prepared for us. His grace lifts us up, His love restores us, and His plan remains unchanged. Nothing we have done can alter the fact that He has called us for a specific purpose, and His desire is to guide us to a life full of hope. The hope that God gives is not like that of the world, which depends on favorable circumstances. His hope is unshakable because it is based on His faithfulness. No matter what we see today, no matter how difficult the circumstances, if we trust in Him, we can be certain that our future is secured in His hands. The trials we face are temporary, but His promise of well-being is eternal. God has not called us to live in fear or uncertainty, but to walk with the confidence that His plan for us is far greater than we can imagine. It is easy to fall into the trap of impatience, wanting immediate answers and looking for quick solutions. But God calls us to trust in His perfect timing. Sometimes He takes us through processes we do not understand, through seasons that seem hard to endure, but every step is necessary to prepare us for what is ahead. His plan is not just to give us a future, but to prepare us to live it in the best way. He wants us to grow, to mature, to learn to depend on His guidance, and to fully trust His wisdom. Every day is an opportunity to align ourselves with God's plans, to let go of our worries, and embrace His purpose. When we choose to trust His promise, we live with a different perspective. We no longer see problems as obstacles, but as opportunities to grow in faith. We know that even the hardest trials are working in our favor, shaping us. God has called us to live with hope, not fear. His plan for our life is one of well-being, and although at times the path seems complicated, His faithfulness never fails. We can rest in the certainty that He is working behind the scenes, opening doors, aligning circumstances, and guiding us step by step. He sees what we cannot see. He knows every detail of our future and has the power to turn every situation into an opportunity for blessing. Today is the time to let go of worry and embrace God's promise. No matter what you face, no matter how uncertain the future seems, remember that God already has a plan prepared for you. His love is greater, it is unconditional, and His promise of well-being is secure. Trust Him, move forward in faith, and allow His perfect plan to be fulfilled in your life. Matthew 6:34 says, "So do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own troubles. Each day has enough trouble of its own." These words are a powerful reminder that we often live preoccupied with the future. We are anxious about things that haven't even happened. We worry about what is to come, about the challenges we may face, about decisions we must make, and in the meantime we let the present slip away, the only moment in which we can truly act. God is clearly telling us to stop worrying, that every day has its own challenges, and that we gain nothing by stressing over what has not yet come. Anxiety does not add anything. It steals our peace, drains our energy, and fills us with unnecessary fears. It causes us to live in a constant state of unease, always expecting the worst, always thinking about what could go wrong. But the truth is, most of the things that worry us never happen, and those that do happen, God already has a plan to resolve them. He invites us to live in the present with confidence, to focus on what we can do today and leave tomorrow in His hands. Each day brings its own challenges, and facing them one by one is the best way to live with peace. It's hard for us to relinquish control. We want to have everything planned, to know exactly what is going to happen and how we will solve it. But God tells us that it is not necessary to live this way. He takes care of us, He knows our needs and provides for us at the right time. This doesn't mean that we should not be responsible or make plans, but that we should not let worry or fear of the future paralyze us. We should not be filled with anxiety about what's coming. If God takes care of the birds of the air and clothes the lilies of the field, how much more will He do for us? We worry about money, health, and the future, but we forget that God is in control of everything. He has never abandoned us, and He never will. Our task is to trust, to do the best we can with what we have today, and let tomorrow take care of itself. This does not mean we should be irresponsible, but rather understand that worrying doesn't change anything, it only wears us out. Anxiety not only affects our mind, it also affects our relationship with God. It distracts us, pulls us away from His presence, and causes us to doubt His love and faithfulness. When we are too consumed with what is to come, we stop seeking God in the present moment. But when we choose to let go of our worries, we experience a peace that surpasses all understanding. We realize that we are not alone, that God is with us every step of the way, and that we can live with the assurance that He is in control. Every day brings its own challenge, its own struggle, but also its own blessings. If we focus on living one day at a time, we can see God's hand at work in the smallest details. We can learn to be grateful for what we have now, instead of worrying about what might be missing tomorrow. Life is lived in the present, and that's where we find true peace, true trust, and true satisfaction. God calls us to trust, to rest in His promise of provision and care. The future is in His hands, and there is no better place for it to be. He knows the beginning and the end, and He knows exactly what we need in every moment. We must not allow worry to steal our joy, to fill us with unnecessary anxiety. Instead, we can choose to live by faith, knowing that God will provide, that He will guide us, and that each day will give us the strength to face whatever comes. Today is the time to place our worries in God's hands, to let go of control, to trust that He has a perfect plan, and to live each day with the certainty that we are not alone. If we learn to trust God in the present, the future will cease to be a source of anxiety and become an opportunity to see His faithfulness in action. Psalm 55:22 says, "Cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never allow the righteous to be moved." How many times have we felt that we carry too heavy a load, that the weight of worries, problems, and struggles of life is more than we can bear? We try to be strong, pretending everything is fine, but deep down, we know we are at our limit. God tells us that we don't have to carry everything on our own, that we can lay our worries at His feet, our fears and doubts to Him, and He will take care of sustaining us. We are not alone in this struggle. We do not have to resolve everything on our own. When we cast our burdens on God, we are taking an act of faith. It is acknowledging that our strength is limited, but His is infinite. He not only listens to us, but also acts, intervening in our lives in ways we don't always understand. Sometimes we believe we are in control, that we can handle everything, but we don't always comprehend it. God calls us to surrender, to trust that He has the power to uphold us in any situation. His promise is clear. If we give our burdens to Him, He will support us. But many times, instead of leaving our worries in God's hands, we keep carrying them. We pray, but immediately we worry again. We try once more to find solutions on our own. It's as if we gave Him our burdens for a moment, only to take them back afterward. God doesn't want us to live like this. He wants us to fully trust, bear the weight of our concerns, and rest in His promise. His love is sufficient, His grace is boundless, and His power is greater than any problem we face. God sustains us every step of the way. This doesn't mean we'll never face difficulties, but it does mean we'll never be alone in them. He gives us strength when we feel weak. He reminds us that we are valuable to Him. The world teaches us to be self-reliant, to be strong on our own, but God invites us to total dependence on Him, not because we are weak, but because we know that in Him we find true strength. No matter how great the burden we carry today, God tells us to release it. We do not have to live under the weight of anxiety, sorrow, or fear. He is ready to take our concerns and lead us to the peace that only He can provide. There is no burden too large or problem too complex for Him. We just need to take the step of faith, trust in His faithfulness, and rest in His promise. The second part of this verse reminds us of something important. God will not leave the righteous fallen forever. Perhaps today you feel knocked down, defeated, as though there's no way out, but God promises you won't remain in that state. His grace is sufficient to lift you up, His love is strong enough to restore you, and His plan for your life is still intact. No matter how many times you've fallen, God continues to reach out His hand to lift you once more. God never leaves His own alone. He sustains us when we're fragile, strengthens us when we're about to give up, and fills us with hope when we believe all is lost. The key is to trust, to let go of fear, and hold on to His word. It's not about ignoring problems, but understanding that God is above them. He is in control, and His love is greater than any difficulty we face. Today is the time to release those burdens you've carried for so long, to stop trying to do it all alone, and allow God to take control. His promise is clear. If you surrender your worries to Him, He will sustain you, strengthen you, and guide you to the purpose He has for your life. Don't let the weight of life blind you to God's love working on your behalf. Trust Him, give Him your burdens, and experience the peace that only He can offer. Hebrews 11:1 says, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." Faith is the driving force that moves us forward, even when we don't have all the answers, when circumstances appear unfavorable, and when the future seems uncertain. It is the absolute certainty that God is at work, even when our eyes can't see it. We live in a world that teaches us to trust only in the tangible, in what we can sense, but true life in God begins when we learn to trust in what hasn't yet happened, knowing He is faithful to fulfill His promises. Faith is not a fleeting emotion, it's not just an optimistic wish, but a deep conviction that anchors us in the storm. It's seeing chaos around us, but knowing God is in control. It's understanding that even when doors appear closed, God has already prepared a way. It's believing that even if we don't see the answer today, God is working silently, in the details, in every aspect of our lives. Faith gives us the assurance that we are not alone, that every prayer is heard, and that every promise God has made will be fulfilled in His perfect timing. It is not always easy to live by faith. We want certainties, we want to see immediate results, and we want visible proof that everything will work out, but faith challenges us to rise above our human limitations, to relinquish control, and trust that God has the best plan. It takes courage because it requires us to move forward even when we don't understand the process. It forces us to release anxiety, to let go of doubt, and to walk confidently, knowing God is with us every step of the way. Even when our physical eyes can't see Him, we are faced with decisions that require faith, from the smallest to the greatest challenges of our lives. We need that certainty that God is orchestrating every detail. Sometimes our mind tells us it's impossible, that there's no way out, that the circumstances are too tough, but faith whispers that God has already prepared the solution, that the impossible for man is possible for him. It's at that point that we truly grow spiritually, when we stop depending on our logic and begin depending entirely on God. Faith is not passive, it compels us to act. It's not just sitting and waiting for things to change, but moving with the conviction that God is working on our behalf. It's praying with the assurance that He hears. It's working with the certainty that His favor is with us. It's facing each day with the confidence that we are not alone. Faith allows us to live with a different perspective, seeing opportunities where others see obstacles, seeing hope where others see despair, seeing God's hand where others only see chaos. God honors faith. In the Bible, we see countless stories of people who trusted Him without seeing immediate results, but each of them experienced His faithfulness. Abraham left his land not knowing where he was going. Moses confronted Pharaoh, trusting in God's power. So many others walk by faith, not by sight. And that same faith is what God calls us to have today. He hasn't changed, His promises remain the same, and His power is unchanging. All He asks of us is that we believe, that we trust, that we keep our eyes fixed on Him and not on the circumstances. Sometimes, situations seem to scream the opposite of what we believe. Difficulties make us doubt. Delays make us think that God has forgotten us. But faith reminds us that God is never late, that His plan is perfect, and that everything we face has a purpose. Our task is to stand firm, without doubting, without giving up, trusting that God is at work, even if we can't see it yet. Today is the time to strengthen our faith, to remember that our trust is not in what we see, but in the One who gave us life. No matter what you are waiting for, no matter how big the challenge may seem, keep believing, because faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. God is with you, His hand is at work, and His promise will be fulfilled in your life. Stand firm, move forward in faith, and you will see how God does extraordinary things. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." These words are a powerful reminder that we are not alone, that in the midst of our struggles and fears, God is by our side, sustaining us, giving us the strength we need to keep going. How many times have we felt overwhelmed by life, facing problems that seem impossible to overcome? Uncertainty creeps in, fear paralyzes us, and we wonder if we can really move forward. But God tells us not to fear because He is here, because His presence is enough, because His love is stronger than any adversity. Fear is one of the most destructive tools we face. It makes us doubt. It stops us from moving forward, and it robs us of peace. But God calls us to leave that fear in His hands, to trust that His presence is greater than any worry. We are not alone in the battle. He is with us in every step, in every decision, in every difficult moment. No matter how dark, His light will always guide us, strengthen us, and remind us that we don't have to do things on our own. Fainting means losing hope, feeling defeated, believing there's no way out, but God tells us not to lose heart, to trust Him because He is our God, our refuge, our endless source of strength. It is not about our own power, but about His strength working in us. Sometimes we feel that we've reached our limit, that we can't take it anymore, but that's when God holds us with His mighty hand, lifting us when we fall, renewing us when we're exhausted, and giving us the strength to continue when we think all is lost. God promises to help us, not just occasionally, but always. But always, His help is constant, loyal, and unshakable. He promises us that no matter the situation, His righteous hand will uphold us. His mighty hand will support us. He guides us, shields us, no matter how great the problem or how tough the circumstances may be. God assures us that His help will never fail us. Perhaps today you're facing a challenge that seems insurmountable, but you need to remember, you're not facing it alone. God is by your side, working in silence, preparing the way, opening doors that you cannot yet see. Life is full of moments of doubt and challenges that make us question our ability to go on, but the assurance that God gives us is stronger than any uncertainty. He not only tells us not to be afraid, but He promises us His unfailing presence. His presence is enough to calm our fears, strengthen our hearts, and provide us with the peace that the world cannot offer. When we feel weak, He is our strength. When we feel like we can't go on, His hand lifts us and upholds us. Trusting in God is an act of faith. It's about releasing control and believing that He has the power to lead us to where we need to be. Many times we want all the answers before taking the next step, but God calls us simply to trust Him to move forward with the confidence that His hand is holding us, that His love will never fail, and that His justice will always protect us. No matter what you're facing today, God has a plan, and that plan is always for your good. Every time fear tries to stop you, remember this promise. God is with you. No matter how great the challenge, His love is greater. No matter how many times you fall, He will always be there to lift you up. He is your refuge in the storm, your strength in weakness, your help in times of need. His righteous hand is the guarantee that He will never leave you, that He will always be by your side, guiding you, supporting you, and giving you the strength to move forward. Today is the time to let go of fear, to leave your burdens in God's hands, and to move forward with confidence. Do not fear, for He is with you. Do not faint, for He is your God. His help will never fail, His love will never run dry, and His justice will always be your support. God sustains you today and always, and with Him by your side there is nothing that can defeat you. John 16:33. These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have affliction, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Jesus offers us a message filled with power and hope. He speaks the truth without exaggeration or false promises. In this world, we will face tribulation, trials, difficult times that will make us doubt and feel weak. But He gives us a reason to trust, to stand firm, because He has already overcome the world. No matter how severe the storm we face, His victory is the guarantee that there is hope, that we are not alone, and that His peace can carry us through any circumstance. The world is full of uncertainty, problems that seem impossible to solve, moments when we feel that everything is against us. Difficulties are inevitable. Life will test us. But in the middle of all this, Jesus offers us something the world cannot, a peace that goes beyond our circumstances, beyond what we can comprehend. It is a peace that endures even in the midst of the storm, because it is not dependent on what is happening around us, but on God's presence within us. Often, we seek peace in the wrong places. We think we will find it when we resolve all our problems, when we achieve financial stability, when everything is under control. But Jesus reminds us that true peace is not found in the absence of problems, but in His presence, even amidst them. He tells us that in the midst of affliction, in the midst of chaos, we can have peace because He has already conquered. His victory over the world is our greatest source of security. Trusting in Jesus does not mean that we will never face difficulties. It means that despite them, we can be sure He is with us. Sometimes we feel that problems overwhelm us, that we can't go on, that life is too heavy. But Jesus calls us to trust, to believe that His power is greater than any adversity, that His love is stronger than any fear, and that His victory assures us that even though we face trials, we will never be defeated. Life constantly challenges us, and there are days when everything seems to be going wrong, when bad news piles up and we feel like we're on the verge of giving up. But this verse reminds us that we don't have to face it all alone. Jesus has already conquered. His victory over death, over sin, over fear, is our guarantee that we can move forward with confidence no matter what comes our way. He has already made a way for us to live in peace. The peace of Christ is not fragile or temporary. It is strong and everlasting. It does not depend on whether things are going well or badly because it is rooted in His absolute victory. He invites us to rest in this truth, to release our worry, and to embrace the confidence that, no matter how the world tries to shake us, His love and power will always be with us. We can walk securely because we are not alone in the fight. His victory is our strength, His presence is our guide, and His peace is our refuge. Jesus warns us that we will face afflictions, that life will not always be easy, but He gives us a reason to keep moving forward with hope. He tells us to trust, to not let difficulties steal our faith, to always remember that His victory is ours. Storms may come, but they cannot take away the peace He offers. We can be certain that His love sustains us, that His grace is sufficient, and that every trial is simply another step towards His perfect plan for our lives. Every time fear tries to overwhelm us, every time uncertainty threatens to weaken us, let us remember these words. Jesus has already conquered, and that victory is ours. We do not have to live in fear. We do not have to worry about what is to come, because His love covers us, His peace fills us, and His power sustains us. The key is to trust, to believe, and to rest in His promise that no matter what we face, He has already conquered. Today is the time to stop living with anxiety, to release our worries, and to embrace the peace that only Jesus can give. No matter what affliction you're facing, His victory is your security in Him. You can find rest in Him, find strength in Him, and find the certainty that all is well. Trust in Him, for He has overcome the world. Psalms 9:10, "Those who know your name will trust in you, for you, O Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you." These words remind us of an unshakable truth. God never forsakes those who trust in Him. Trusting in God is not merely a choice. It is a natural response for those who have experienced His love, faithfulness, and presence in their lives. Those who know His name, who have witnessed His hand at work, know they can rely on Him in all circumstances because He never fails. When we know God's name, it's not just about knowing what to call Him, but understanding who He truly is. His name represents His character, His love, His justice, and His faithfulness. When we grasp this, our confidence grows because we know that no matter how difficult the situation, He will be there. God is not like the world that offers temporary help or ever-changing promises. He is constant, faithful, and will never leave us. His promise is clear. He will never forsake those who seek Him. There are times in life when we feel as though everything is working against us, when doors seem to close and answers don't come. It's easy to doubt, easy to feel abandoned. But the truth is, God is always working, even when we can't see it. The key is to seek Him with all our hearts, to approach Him with faith, knowing that He will never forsake us. When we seek Him, we find refuge, guidance, and peace amidst chaos. Trusting in God is not just a momentary decision. It is a daily choice. It means giving Him our worries, burdens, and fears, knowing He is in control. It means letting go of anxiety and resting in His promise. God does not abandon His own, He never has, and He never will. History is filled with stories of those who trusted Him and saw His faithfulness manifest in remarkable ways. And that same faithfulness is available to you today. We try to solve things on our own. We trust in our strengths, our resources, and our connections. But only when we return to God and place our trust in Him do we experience true peace. He never disappoints us, never leaves us adrift, never turns away from us. He is always ready to guide us, strengthen us, and show us the right way. To know God's name means to understand that He is our provider, our healer, our refuge, and our strength. It reminds us that no matter what we face, He has the answer. There is no situation too large for Him, no problem He cannot solve, and no heart He cannot restore. Our trust in Him is built day by day through the experience of His love and faithfulness. When we trust in God, we live with a different perspective. We do not let fear take over, nor do we allow circumstances to define our faith. We know that even though everything may seem complicated, He has a perfect plan and is always working in our favor. His love is unwavering, His grace is sufficient, and His presence is constant. No matter how dark the path may be, His light will always guide us. Seeking God is the key to experiencing His faithfulness. It is not just about seeking Him in times of crisis, but about making Him our priority at all times. When we place Him at the center of our lives, everything else finds its place. Our faith grows, our hope is strengthened, and our peace becomes unshakable. He never forsakes us, and His love is the greatest proof that we can trust Him without reservation. Today is the time to remember that God is faithful, that His love never fails, and that those who trust in His name will never be forsaken. No matter what situation you are facing, His promise remains the same. If you seek Him, He will be with you. Trust, rest in His promise, and allow His love to fill every area of your life. God will never leave you alone, for His faithfulness is eternal. Philippians 4:6-7, Be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. How many times do we allow ourselves to be consumed by worry, by anxiety, by the constant fear of the future, the unknown, and what might go wrong? We live with our minds filled with what we do not have, what we lack, and what could happen. But God gives us a clear alternative. Instead of worrying, we must bring everything to Him in prayer. Prayer is not just a religious act. It is a direct channel of communication with God, where we can release our burdens, express our needs, and give thanks for what He has already done. God does not ask us to ignore our problems, but He invites us to trust Him. He tells us to bring each request to Him with a heart full of gratitude, because when we acknowledge His faithfulness, worry loses its power over our lives. It's not only about asking, but about thanking in the midst of waiting, because we know God is already at work, even when we cannot see Him. God's peace is unlike anything else we can experience. It is not the absence of problems, but a deep tranquility that comes from knowing we are in His hands. It is a peace that the world cannot comprehend, because it does not depend on circumstances, but on His presence in our lives. In God's hands, His peace fills our hearts and minds, protecting us from anxiety, negative thoughts, and despair that tries to overwhelm us. But many times, instead of surrendering our burdens to God, we continue carrying them with us. We pray, but we keep worrying. We keep trying to figure everything out on our own. We struggle with letting go of control, with trusting fully. Yet God tells us that His peace is an available gift for us, but it requires a step of faith to trust that He is working, that His timing is perfect, and that His love never fails. When we make prayer a habit, we experience a profound transformation. We stop seeing problems as threats and start seeing them as opportunities to witness God's hand at work. We realize we are not alone, that every need, every concern is being cared for by a loving Father who pays attention to every detail of our lives. Anxiety diminishes when we remember that God is in charge, that He is in control, and that His plan for us is always good. God calls us to live with gratitude, to recognize His goodness even in the midst of trials. Gratitude changes our perspective. It teaches us to see life from a position of hope, not fear. When we give thanks, we are declaring that we trust God, that we believe in His faithfulness, and that we hope in His perfect will. Prayer with thanksgiving not only brings answers but also transforms our hearts, fills us with hope, and strengthens us in difficult times. It is replacing worry with prayer. Every time anxiety knocks on our door, we must respond with faith, with confidence that God is in control. When things slip out of our hands, we must remember that nothing is beyond God's reach. He promises to guard our hearts and minds, protect us from heartbreak, and give us a peace that the world cannot understand or offer. Today is the time to let go of worry and embrace God's peace. Let go of fear about the future, anxiety over what we cannot control, and trust that God is at work in every detail of our lives. No matter how great the problem, His peace is greater. No matter how uncertain the future may seem, His love is unshakable. Bring everything to Him in prayer. Trust, be thankful, and experience the peace that surpasses all understanding. Job 13:15. Though He slay me, yet will I trust Him. Even so, I will defend my own ways before Him. These words reflect an unshakable faith, an absolute trust in God, even in the deepest suffering. Job, despite losing everything, facing pain, anguish, and uncertainty, declares with conviction that his hope is still placed in God. This teaches us that true faith is not based on circumstances, but on who God is, His faithfulness, His sovereignty, His unchanging love. It is easy to trust God when all is well, when life seems to smile upon us and problems are few. But the true test of our faith comes when we face adversity, when answers do not come, when life becomes difficult and we find ourselves in pain and uncertainty. Job understood something few managed to grasp. Our relationship with God does not depend on what we have or what He gives us, but on who He is. Even if life takes us to the edge, even when it feels like everything is against us, our confidence must remain firm because God never changes. Trust in God when all seems lost is one of the greatest challenges of faith. We face doubts, thoughts that make us question whether it's worth continuing to believe. But Job shows us that hope in God is not based on what we see, but on what we know about His character. He is just faithful and has a purpose. Even in the midst of pain, we may not always understand why things happen, but we can be sure that God has a greater plan. Even if we can't see Him defending our ways before God in the moment, it doesn't mean we can't have questions or express our pain. Job teaches us that we can approach God with sincerity, with an open heart, carrying our doubts and struggles, but without losing faith. God is not offended by our questions. He wants us to seek Him, to give our burdens to Him, and to place all our worries in His hands. Honesty in our relationship with God is key, but always with a heart willing to trust, even when we don't understand the process. Suffering is a reality of life, and often we want to avoid it at all costs. But true faith is strengthened in the midst of trials. When everything seems dark, when there are no answers, when we feel that God is silent, that is where our faith must be strongest. Not because we have all the answers, but because we know in whom we have believed. Faith is not having guarantees of a problem-free life, but having the certainty that God is with us every step of the way. Job shows us that faith is not passive, it is active. It is not just waiting, it is continuing to trust, continuing to walk, continuing to believe, even when we cannot see the way out. Life will present us with moments when it seems that God has abandoned us, when the pain is so overwhelming that it makes us doubt. But faith is that inner voice that tells us, keep trusting, keep waiting, keep believing. God has not forgotten you. He is still working even if you can't see it. Sometimes we think faith is just about receiving blessings, but true faith is tested in the moments when we lose, when it hurts, when everything seems to be against us. That's when our relationship with God either grows stronger or falls apart. Job decided to trust, decided to wait, decided to believe, And God honored his faith not because Job deserved it, but because God is faithful to his promises. And that same faithfulness is available to us today. No matter what you're facing, no matter how great the trial, keep waiting on God, even if you do not understand, even if you feel the process hurts. His plan is perfect. You can approach him with a sincere heart. You can express your pain, but never stop trusting. He is working, he is still God, and his love for you never changes. Psalm 23:4, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. These words are a reminder that no matter how dark or difficult the road we face, we are not alone. We all, at some point in our lives, go through dark valleys, moments of uncertainty, pain, or fear. We walk through terrains that seem impossible to cross, where God feels distant and fear wants to take over our hearts. But here is the most powerful promise: God is with us. The valley of the shadow of death represents those times when life seems at its most critical, when everything around us looks bleak and like a dead end. It is in these moments that our faith is tested, when the enemy tries to sow doubt, and when our own thoughts can turn against us. However, David teaches us that we need not fear, not because the valley is not real, not because dangers do not exist, but because God's presence is greater than any threat we face. His presence is our safety. His companionship is our refuge. Not fearing evil does not mean we do not see it or feel it. It means we know in whom we have placed our trust. It means that even if the enemy surrounds us, even though circumstances seem to be against us, our faith remains firm because we know that God will not leave us alone. The security of his presence strengthens us, sustains us, and gives us the courage to keep going, even when everything within us wants to surrender. His rod and his staff infuse us with encouragement. The tools that shepherds use to guide and protect their sheep, the rod, represents their protection, their power to keep us away from danger, to defend us from any threat. The staff represents their guidance, their constant direction, their loving control to keep us on the right path. God is not only with us, but he guides us with wisdom, protects us from dangers we do not see, and assures us that every step we take is under his watchful eye. When we cross our own dark valleys, fear whispers that we are alone, that there is no way out, that the situation will overwhelm us. But the truth is that God walks by our side. He does not observe us from a distance. He is present, holding us, speaking to us, giving us the strength we need to move forward. His love surrounds us at every step, and his grace sustains us even when we feel that we cannot take it anymore. There is no valley so deep that his light cannot illuminate, nor shadow so dense that his presence cannot dissipate. The world teaches us to fear, to worry, to depend on our own strength to move forward, but this verse calls us to trust, to rest in the certainty that no matter what we face, God is with us. We can walk securely with our heads held high because we are not alone in the battle. He guides us with love, protects us with his power, and gives us the courage to move forward. Each of us faces different valleys. It may be a loss, an illness, a difficult financial situation, family problems, uncertainty about the future, but the promise remains the same. God is with you. He sustains you, strengthens you, fills you with hope. When you feel that there is no way out, you don't need to have all the answers. You just need to trust that his presence is enough to carry you through any circumstance. The valley is not the end of the road, it is just a stage. God takes us through it not to leave us trapped, but to strengthen us, to show us his faithfulness, to teach us to depend completely on him. And when we reach the other side, we will look back and realize that his presence was what sustained us in every moment of weakness. His rod protected us, his staff guided us, and his love sustained us. Today, you may be going through your own valley of shadow, but fear not. God is with you. His presence is real, His love is sufficient, and His protection is unwavering. Lift up your gaze, keep moving forward in faith, for at the end of the valley there is light, there is victory, there is hope. His rod and His staff will breathe encouragement into you. His love will sustain you, and His grace will carry you farther than you ever imagined. Lamentations 3:22-23. Through the Lord's mercies we are not consumed, because His compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. These words are a reminder that in spite of our failures, our mistakes, and the difficult circumstances we face, God remains faithful. His mercy is what sustains us, enabling us to rise each day with a new opportunity, with renewed hope, knowing that His love never fails. No matter how dark the day before may have been, today His mercies are new, ready to restore us, strengthen us, and guide us. Life is filled with difficult times, with trials that make us feel exhausted, situations that make us question whether we can keep going. But this verse assures us that we are not alone, that we have not been consumed by adversity because God's love covers us. He sustains us even when we feel that everything is lost. His mercy is constant, it is never exhausted, it has no limits. God does not treat us according to what we deserve, but according to His infinite love and unwavering grace. Every morning is a new opportunity to experience His love, to leave behind the weight of yesterday, and walk with the certainty that He gives us a new beginning. No matter how many times we have failed, no matter how many wrong decisions we have made, His mercy reaches us again and again. God does not condemn us or reject us. He gives us the opportunity to rise up, to correct our path, and to move forward with hope. His faithfulness is so great that He never leaves us alone. He never abandons us, and He always gives us what we need at the perfect time. Many times we feel unworthy of His love. We carry the guilt and weight of the past, thinking that we've gone too far, that our failures are too great. But God reminds us that His mercy is greater than any mistake, that His love is stronger than any failure. He calls us to draw near, to receive His grace, trusting that each day brings a new opportunity to start fresh, to live purposefully, and to experience His faithfulness in all areas of our lives. God's faithfulness does not depend on our circumstances or our behavior. It is part of His nature. He is constant. He is unchanging. He remains faithful even when we are not. He continues to love us even when we stray. He continues to care for us even when we do not see Him. His faithfulness surrounds us, protects us, and drives us forward with confidence, knowing that God is faithful. His faithfulness gives us the certainty that we can face any challenge, any difficult season, because He is with us, providing, guiding, and strengthening our hearts. Every day we wake up is a proof of His mercy. Every opportunity we have to breathe, to live, to love is a sign of His infinite love. We worry about the future, so we try to control what we cannot. But God reminds us that His mercy is new every morning. He has everything under control, and His faithfulness accompanies us every step of the way. We do not have to live in fear or uncertainty, because we can trust that His love never runs out. God is a God of second chances, of inexhaustible grace, and of love without conditions. No matter what you have done, no matter how far you feel you are, His mercy is available to you. Today, His faithfulness does not change, it does not weaken, it is not broken. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and that gives us the assurance that we can trust Him with all our being, with every area of our life, with every dream, with every fear. Today is the day to remember that we are not alone, that His mercy surrounds us, that His love surrounds us, that we are not alone. He holds us, and His faithfulness is our greatest strength. No matter what you face, God is faithful. No matter how great the challenge, His love is enough. Rise up with confidence, receive His mercy, allow His faithfulness to fill your heart with hope, and walk in the certainty that He will never leave you. 1 Peter 5, verse 7. Cast all your anxiety on Him, for He cares for you. How many times have we felt overwhelmed by worries, by the weight of life, by the uncertainties that lie ahead? Day after day, we cling to our problems, carrying them like a heavy load that steals our peace, takes away our joy, and fills us with fear. But God offers us a clear and powerful invitation. Let go of that burden. Give it to me because I care for you. You don't have to carry the weight of your own life, your worries. You don't have to wear yourself out trying to fix everything, because I am here to support you. Anxiety is like a shadow that chases us, whispering lies to us, making us think that we are alone, that no one understands us, that there is no way out. But the truth is that we are not alone. We never have been. God is attentive to every detail of our life, to every tear, to every thought that steals our peace. He not only sees our struggle, but offers us a solution. He says, "Give it all to me." Not some things, not only what seems impossible, but all your anxiety, all your worries, your fears, your doubts. He asks us to stop fighting alone and give Him what weighs us down. God does not want us to live burdened with worries that we cannot control. He wants us to live confidently, knowing that His love and His power are enough to sustain us. But sometimes we struggle to let go. We have difficulty trusting fully, wanting to be in control, wanting to figure everything out on our own, and that's where we get exhausted, frustrated, and feel like nothing changes. But when we choose to surrender our anxiety to God, we experience something different, something the world cannot offer. Peace that surpasses all understanding. Trusting God doesn't mean that problems go away immediately, but it does mean we no longer face them alone. When we cast our anxiety on Him, we recognize that we don't have to carry the burden alone, that there is someone greater, stronger, wiser than we are who already has the solution, who has already charted a path for us. It is an act of faith, an act of surrender, an act of humility by recognizing that we need His help. God cares for us in ways we can't even imagine. He knows our deepest thoughts, our sincerest longings, and our greatest struggles. He loves us with perfect love, a love that does not depend on what we do or fail to do. His care is not based on our strength, but on His grace. We are not alone in this battle. We are not fighting without direction. He is attentive, He is near, He is ready to intervene when we allow Him to act. Every time anxiety tries to take hold of you, remember this truth: God is taking care of you. You don't have to know everything, you don't have to understand everything, you just need to trust that He is in control. His love is greater than any problem, His wisdom is infinite, and His presence is constant. When you leave your anxiety in His hands, He begins to work opening doors, giving you the peace you need. Letting go of our worries in God sets us free, allowing us to live with a clear mind, a heart full of hope, and the certainty that no matter what comes, He sustains us. Anxiety robs us of peace, but trust in God restores it to us. He takes care of us with perfect love, constant attention, and a deep desire to see us live fully, not in fear. Today is the time to let go, to surrender everything that robs you of peace. Don't continue to carry what God already wants to carry for you. Trust in His love, in His care, in His faithfulness. You are not alone. You never have been, and you never will be. God takes care of you in every detail, in every step, in every challenge. Let go of your anxiety, give it to Him, and experience the peace that only He can give. Verse 19, Isaiah 26:3, you will keep in perfect peace the one whose mind is steadfast because he trusts in you. True peace is not found in material things, in the absence of problems, or in favorable circumstances. The peace that God offers is complete, perfect, unshakable. It does not depend on what is happening around us, but on where our mind and heart are focused. When we keep our thoughts firmly on God, when we trust fully in Him, we experience a peace that the world cannot offer, peace that transcends all understanding and endures, even in the greatest storms. We live in a world full of noise, worries, and constant uncertainty. The news, the responsibilities, the expectations of life overwhelm us and make us feel like we can never find rest. But God promises us that if we focus our minds on Him, if we persevere in His Word, in His love, in His faithfulness, we will be kept in perfect peace. This is not a momentary peace, not a passing sensation. It is a firm peace that sustains us in the most difficult moments and gives us the assurance that He is in control of all things. Persevering in God means more than simply thinking of Him from time to time. It means making His presence our priority. Seeking Him in every situation, surrendering every thought, every worry, every desire, learning to depend on Him in every area of our lives. Seeing Him as our inexhaustible source of security and direction. When we learn to keep our thoughts on God, we find emotional rest. We find rest for our soul, and we can live with confidence that does not waver in the face of challenges. The peace that God gives is not the same as the peace offered by the world. The world tells us that peace comes from having more, from achieving goals, from eliminating problems. But God's peace is different. It is not based on circumstances, but on a deep relationship with Him. It is not the absence of problems, but the certainty that no matter what we face, God is with us, guiding us, sustaining us, giving us strength. When we trust God, it means letting go of control, letting go of anxiety, giving up fear, and resting in the assurance that He never fails. When we truly trust God, our hearts are stilled, our thoughts align with His will, and our lives are filled with hope. Trusting in God allows us to see beyond what our eyes can see, gives us the certainty that He is at work even when we can't understand it, and fills us with peace even in the midst of the storm. The key to experiencing this peace is perseverance. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a daily decision to keep our thoughts on Him, to remember His faithfulness, to fill our minds with His Word, and to reject the lies of fear and anxiety. It's a constant process of surrender, of communion with God, and when we persevere in Him, His peace covers us. God never promises us a life without problems, but He promises us His peace. In the midst of them, He promises that if we keep our minds focused on Him, nothing can rob us of the peace He gives. He promises that His love will sustain us, that His faithfulness will guide us, and that His presence will give us the security we so desperately need. No matter what you face today, His peace is available to you if you choose to trust Him fully. Every day is an opportunity to decide where we will focus our thoughts. We can let ourselves be carried away by worry and fear of uncertainty, or we can choose to trust God, stand firm in His Word, and receive the peace He offers us. The choice. God is ready to keep us in perfect peace, but we must be willing to surrender our thoughts, our worries, and our entire lives. Today is the time to surrender your thoughts to God, to trust Him with all your heart, and may His peace flood you. No matter what you are facing, His peace, His love is greater. It is enough. His faithfulness is eternal. Set your gaze on Him, give Him your burdens, and live in the assurance that He is in control. The peace you long for is closer than you think. You just need to trust and persevere in His presence. Verse 20, Deuteronomy 31-8. The Lord Himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid or discouraged. This promise is an inexhaustible source of strength and comfort in the midst of uncertainty. It reminds us that no matter what we face, we are not alone. God not only walks with us, but goes ahead, preparing the way, opening doors, breaking down barriers, and ensuring that every step we take aligns with His perfect plan. There is no reason to fear, because His presence is our guarantee that we can move forward with courage and confidence. Life is full of challenges, of moments when we feel trapped, not knowing what decision to make without the strength to continue. It's easy to get discouraged when things don't go as we expect, when the answers don't come, when the doors seem to close. But God tells us clearly, He is with us, not as a distant observer, but as a loving Father who walks beside us every step of the way. In every challenge, in every moment of doubt, we are not alone, and that truth must fill our hearts with hope. God goes before us, which means He has already seen what is to come. Nothing takes Him by surprise, and He has absolute control over our future. Maybe today you don't understand why you're facing certain trials, but you must remember that He has already mapped out a perfect path for you. He knows what you need, when you need it, and how you need it. His presence not only accompanies us, but also guides us, directs us, and assures us that no matter what comes, everything is under His control. Fear and discouragement are enemies that try to paralyze us, attempting to divert us from the purpose God has for our lives, filling us with doubts, negative thoughts, and uncertainty. But God doesn't leave us helpless. He says not to fear, so we shouldn't let discouragement steal our peace. His presence is our greatest security. His love is our greatest strength. No matter how uncertain the future may seem, we can walk with our heads held high because Almighty God is by our side. When we face tough situations, when we feel that the weight of life is too much to bear, it's easy to think that God has walked away, that He's left us alone in the struggle. But this verse reminds us of a powerful truth. God will never leave us or forsake us. His love is constant. His faithfulness is eternal. There is no moment of weakness, failure, or uncertainty when He is not present. He remains faithful even when we doubt, when we fall, when we feel we can't go on. His love sustains us, lifts us up, and drives us to move forward. God does not promise that life will be easy, but He does promise to be with us every step of the way. His presence is the greatest gift we can receive. We are not fighting alone. We are not facing life without direction. He is here, reminding us that no matter how difficult the situation, He is bigger than any problem, stronger than any adversity. His presence gives us the peace we need to face tomorrow with courage. Many times we want to have all the answers before taking the next step. We want to see the path clearly before moving forward. But faith calls us to trust that God is already there, that He has already prepared the way, that His guidance is perfect. He asks us to trust, to let go of fear, and to cling to Him always. His faithfulness never fails, His love never fails, His presence never abandons us. Today is the time to lift your gaze, to remember that God is with you, that He goes before you, and that He will never leave you alone. Don't let fear stop you, don't let discouragement extinguish your hope. Trust that God is at work, that His plan is perfect, and that His presence is all you need to move forward. Don't be afraid, because the Lord Himself goes before you, guiding you, protecting you, and assuring you that you will never be alone. Before I finish, I want you to reaffirm your trust in God. Go to the comments and write with faith, Lord, I trust you. Even when it's hard, declare it with all your heart